It started with a small sound, almost lost in the endless noise of space. A weak radio signal, broken and strange, reached Earth one quiet night. The antennas of a deep space listening station in Chile caught it first. The scientists thought it was just static from a dying star, or maybe a satellite bouncing a signal back. But when they looked closer, they found a strange pattern inside it. The signal repeated itself in a rhythm that no natural object could make. It was not random, it was language. At first, only a few people in the astronomy team knew about it. They worked for days without sleep, listening to the same repeating sound. It was faint, fading in and out like someone crying from a faraway ocean. The pattern used numbers and geometry, perfect triangles, squares, and prime numbers. That was the first clue that whoever sent it understood math the same way humans did. After years of searching the sky for other life, this was something new, something real. When the news quietly reached the higher scientific agencies, the excitement and fear began. Governments asked for silence. They didn't want to cause panic among people. For weeks, teams from NASA, ESA, and several Asian observatories studied the signal. It was coming from a star system over 2,000 light-years away, near the edge of the Perseus arm of the Milky Way. That distance meant the signal had traveled for more than 2,000 years before reaching Earth. Whoever sent it might already be gone or might still be, waiting. The message was written in layers of complex data. Every time the scientists decoded one part, another hidden message appeared beneath it. It was like peeling an onion made of sound and light. Finally, after months of work, a linguist named Dr. Rana Malik found a repeating section that seemed emotional, like someone speaking the same word again and again. It wasn't just numbers anymore. It carried tone, rhythm, and a strange sadness. When her computer translated the mathematical patterns into visual symbols, a sentence slowly formed. "Help us survive." Those 3 words changed everything. At first, nobody wanted to believe it. The world had been fooled before, hoaxes, false signals, human interference. But this time was different. The message had come from deep space, far beyond any human satellite. It carried information about the sender's world, a place with 2 moons, a red sun, and continents shaped like petals. It also contained images made of light and sound, showing tall, thin beings with delicate features. They looked almost fragile, like living sculptures of glass. They called themselves the Viralians. Their message was not about friendship or exploration. It was a cry for help. Their star was dying. Their planet was slowly losing its air and warmth. The Viralians said they had watched their oceans freeze and their crops turn to dust. Entire cities had moved underground. They had built shelters, machines, and new forms of energy, but nothing was enough. The message ended with another line that made many scientists shiver. "You are our last chance." When this was revealed to the United Nations Scientific Council, confusion filled the room. Could it be real? Were these creatures still alive? And most importantly, what could humans even do? Earth itself was struggling with climate change, wars, and division. Some leaders wanted to ignore the message, saying it was none of Earth's concern. Others argued that if a civilization was calling across light years for help, humanity had a moral duty to answer. The world split into 2 sides. One side believed it was a trap. They said maybe the message came from a hostile species pretending to be victims. Maybe it was bait to lure humanity into danger. The other side believed it was real, and that ignoring it would be a crime against existence itself. Newspapers and news channels leaked parts of the discovery, and soon the entire world was talking about the alien SOS. Streets filled with people holding signs that said, "We are not alone," and "Help them before it's too late." Children wrote letters to space agencies asking if they could send food or water into the stars. Scientists started creating new groups to study what kind of technology could travel such long distances. For the first time in human history, every country shared data with each other. Rival nations opened communication lines that had been closed for years. The message had done something strange. It made people on Earth look at each other not as enemies, but as one species. Still, not everyone was hopeful. Some people were afraid. Religious leaders argued over what the message meant. Some said it was a test from God. Others said it was the devil's trick. The media ran endless debates. Should humans respond? What if they come here? What if we invite danger? The fear spread faster than facts. But through all the noise, a small group of scientists kept working quietly in secret labs trying to send a reply. It took them 6 more months to design a signal strong enough to reach that far. When they finally sent the message back, they used the same mathematical code the Varelians had used. Their message was short. "We hear you. Tell us more." Then they waited. Days passed, weeks, nothing came back. Some began to believe the aliens were already gone. Then one night the signal returned, clearer, brighter, and filled with new information. The Varelians had received the reply. They sent back detailed maps of their system, data about their biology, and recordings of their world. One recording showed a sky full of fire as their red sun flared violently. Another showed their children being moved into underground shelters. Their voices were soft, musical, almost like singing. But the sadness behind the sound was unmistakable. For the scientists who watched those first transmissions, it was emotional beyond words. They realized they were seeing a civilization on the edge of extinction. It wasn't just a story about aliens anymore, it was about life, survival, and the fear of dying alone in the universe. In the following months, more signals came. Each one was shorter, as if the Varelians were losing power. They asked for help building a new world, away from their dying star. They had tried to escape but lacked the strength to cross interstellar distances. They said their bodies were not built for violence, harsh climates, or change. They were peaceful artists and thinkers, not explorers. Their world had been too kind for too long, and when disaster struck, they had no way to fight it. On Earth, a quiet name began to spread among the scientists who studied the message. They called themselves Deathworlders. It was a term used in old science papers, meaning beings who come from deadly planets. Earth was one of the harshest known worlds: storms, volcanoes, diseases, predators. Humans had evolved by surviving all that. To the Varelians, humanity was terrifying, yet full of hope. When they described humans in one of their final transmissions, they used a strange phrase that made everyone silent. "You are the children of chaos, born in pain, yet you live. Teach us how." That line broke every barrier of doubt. It made even the most skeptical scientists believe that this was no trick. It was a real voice reaching across light years, asking for help not just to live, but to understand survival itself. By now, the story had spread across the world. Ordinary people began donating money to space research programs. Universities opened new departments focused on interstellar communication. Artists painted images of the Varelians, and musicians created songs inspired by the cry of the stars. The world was changing, slowly, but deeply. For a moment in time, humanity stopped arguing about its own differences. It no longer mattered which country was richest or which army was strongest. What mattered was that somewhere out there, someone needed help. And for the first time in human history, Earth wasn't thinking about conquering or defending. It was thinking about saving. But still, the mystery remained. Why did the Varelians choose Earth? How did they know humans existed? Their message mentioned something strange. They had seen signs of Earth's broadcasts, radio waves, music, television, spreading into space. They had followed those faint signals back, finding hope in the noise. The irony was almost poetic. While humans had been sending meaningless entertainment into the cosmos, another civilization had taken those signals as proof of life and had decided to call for help. The scientists who led the decoding mission stood together one night watching the stars. They realized that the simple, broken message had changed everything. The universe was not silent anymore. Somewhere out there, fragile lives were holding on, believing that the most dangerous species, the Deathworlders, might also be their saviors. No one could yet imagine how far that belief would take humanity, or how deeply it would test them. But one thing was certain. The moment the words "help us survive" were heard, history itself had turned a page. The long silence between worlds was finally broken. When the message from the Varelians was finally confirmed, Earth entered into a strange new time, half filled with excitement, half filled with fear. Every television channel, every news site, and every person with a phone was talking about the same thing: the aliens who had begged for help. But while ordinary people were filled with wonder, the world's leaders were drowning in questions. Meetings began in secret rooms, under heavy security. The United Nations called emergency sessions that lasted for days. Scientists, politicians, and military officials from every country sat in the same hall, staring at the images of the thin, fragile beings whose world was dying. Some felt compassion, others suspicion. Nobody could agree on what to do next. One American general stood up during the first meeting and said, "For all we know, this is bait. What if they're not dying but waiting to invade us?" Across the room, a Japanese scientist shook his head. "If they can travel this far and send a message like this, they don't need to trick us. They could already destroy us. They're not asking for war. They're begging." The room fell silent. The arguments went on for hours, then days. The media outside called it the debate of the Deathworlders. It became the biggest global discussion in history. For once, it wasn't about land, money, or politics. It was about whether humanity had the courage to reach beyond fear. As the days passed, opinions divided the planet. Some said humans had a duty to help. Others said it was foolish to interfere. The internet exploded with conspiracy theories. People posted fake videos of alien ships in the sky. Religious leaders gave emotional speeches. Some called the message a test from God to see if humanity had learned kindness. Others called it a trick from demons to lead humans into destruction. Despite all the noise, a quiet group of scientists, engineers, and astronauts worked behind the scenes. They believed the message was real and that Earth could help. Among them was Captain Lena DeVore, a calm and brave woman known for her work in deep space exploration. When she read the decoded messages, she said, "If they had wanted to harm us, they wouldn't have said please." Those words spread across the world like fire. Meanwhile, governments kept fighting about money and control. Each nation wanted to lead the mission if it happened. The Americans wanted it under NASA. The Europeans wanted a united Earth team. The Chinese and Indians wanted equal say. It looked like humanity might waste this chance because of pride. But then something unexpected happened. During one of the long meetings, the Varelians sent another signal. It was short and weak, but it changed everything. The message contained an image of their children, small, transparent-skinned beings with large eyes, holding hands in a room filled with dim red light. At the bottom of the image was a line, "We are waiting." That picture broke the hearts of even the toughest people in the room. Arguments stopped. For the first time, the room fell completely silent. After that day, things moved faster. A special international alliance was formed, called Operation Dawnreach. It was the first mission ever to be planned not by one country, but by the entire planet. The goal was simple: to build a ship that could reach the Varelians and help them survive. The plan was incredibly risky. No one had ever traveled that far, and even the newest engines could take decades. But the scientists believed it was possible if they worked together. As the news became public, people around the world reacted in different ways. Some celebrated, calling it the start of a new age. They painted murals of humans and Varelians holding hands under the same stars. Others protested, saying the world should focus on Earth's own problems: hunger, poverty, war. But even those who doubted couldn't deny that something had changed. Humanity was looking up again, together. The name Deathworlders began to appear in newspapers. At first, it was meant as an insult from an alien science document found in the Varelians' transmission. The aliens had described Earth as a death world, a planet too harsh and violent for most life to survive. But people started to take pride in it. They said, "Yes, we come from a dangerous world, but we survive. That's our strength." The word turned from fear into identity. Humanity, for once, didn't see itself as weak or divided. It saw itself as powerful and capable of compassion. Inside the United Nations, the team for Operation Dawnreach began to take shape. Hundreds of scientists, engineers, doctors, and linguists from every corner of the planet joined. They met in a newly built research station in orbit called Unity Ring. It circled Earth like a shining symbol of cooperation. From there, they worked on designing a ship that could travel farther than any human had ever gone. While the engineers built, the world below watched and waited. People tuned in to daily broadcasts showing progress: the construction of the ship, the testing of the engines, and the simulations of alien contact. Schools taught children about the Varelians. Artists painted pictures of their red sun and twin moons. Poets wrote about the courage of answering a cry from the stars. Yet under all the hope, fear still lingered. Some people whispered that the mission would bring disaster. Others believed that the Varelians would come to Earth instead, bringing disease or destruction. Governments had to calm people down. They promised that every precaution would be taken. Military satellites were moved into orbit for protection. Secret defense plans were drawn, just in case. Captain Lena DeVore, chosen to lead the mission, became a global symbol of courage. Reporters followed her everywhere. When she gave her first public speech, she said something that would be remembered for generations. If the universe called for help, and we turned away, we would not deserve to call ourselves human. Those words appeared on posters, shirts, and even buildings. Humanity had found its purpose again. Months turned into years. The ship, named the Horizon Ark, grew piece by piece. Its massive hull was built from new lightweight metals and powered by an experimental fusion engine. Every nation contributed something. Japan provided the navigation system, Germany the life support modules, Pakistan and India developed the AI, and America and Russia built the propulsion system together. The project cost more money than any war ever had, but nobody complained. People wanted it to succeed. During construction, new messages kept arriving from the Varelians, though weaker each time. They spoke of the growing darkness on their planet, of cold winds and the fading of their red sun. They sent messages of gratitude saying, "We are still waiting. Your light gives us strength." Many humans cried when they heard those words. It made them work harder. While the engineers built the ship, the philosophers and spiritual leaders discussed the meaning of what was happening. For centuries, humans had looked at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now they knew they weren't. But it wasn't just a discovery, it was a responsibility. It meant that life was fragile everywhere, not just on Earth. That understanding humbled many. Still, there were people who didn't like it. Some believed Earth was being foolish, wasting time and energy helping strangers light years away. A few countries tried to pull out of the project, but public pressure forced them back in. For the first time in history, the voice of the people was louder than the voice of politics. Years passed, and finally, the Horizon Ark stood ready in orbit. It was the most advanced ship ever built by humans, a shining symbol of unity and hope. Inside it were hundreds of men and women from different nations, all trained to survive the long journey. They called themselves the Starbound. Before departure, there was a global broadcast. Every screen on Earth showed Captain Lena DeVore standing before the ship, wearing her white and blue flight suit. Behind her, Earth glowed in the distance. She spoke softly but clearly. "We are not going as conquerors. We are going as friends." A voice from the darkness asked for help, and we will answer. The crowd watching from all over the planet erupted into cheers and tears. In that moment, it didn't matter where anyone came from or what language they spoke. Humanity felt united, but deep down even the bravest knew the risks. The journey would take years. The crew might never return. The distance was so great that communication would take weeks between messages, and no one knew what waited for them when they arrived. Yet they went anyway, because for the first time humans were acting not out of greed or fear, but out of pure compassion. As the engines of the Horizon Ark fired and the ship began to move away from Earth, millions watched the bright trail disappear into the night sky. Children pointed at it, whispering, "They're going to help." Parents held their hands, hoping their children would live in a world where kindness reached the stars. In that single moment, something inside humanity changed forever. The old world of division and distrust faded, replaced by a new identity. The Deathworlders, the survivors of chaos, the ones who would not let another world die alone. The debates were over. The decision was made. Humanity had chosen to answer the call, and as the Earth grew smaller behind the departing ship, one truth became clear. Even in the darkest corners of the universe, compassion could still shine brighter than fear. The day the Horizon Ark left Earth was unlike any other day in human history. Every city, every village, every island had its eyes turned toward the sky. People filled the streets watching the giant screens that showed the shining ship rise into orbit. The world had been waiting for this moment for years, and when it finally happened, it felt like humanity had taken its first true step into the universe. The ship's engines glowed like a second sun, and the sound of cheers echoed across continents. For once, the whole planet was united by hope instead of fear. Inside the Horizon Ark, the crew sat silently in their seats as the ship began its long journey away from home. Captain Lena DeVore looked out of the window at the shrinking blue Earth. Her heart was heavy but proud. She whispered softly, "We'll be back." No one knew if that was true, but everyone wanted to believe it. The ship was massive, 3 kilometers long, filled with laboratories, sleeping quarters, gardens for food, and a special chamber that carried gifts for the Varelians. Those gifts were not gold or weapons, but seeds, medicine, and knowledge. The journey to the Verelian system would take years, even with the most advanced technology ever created. The ship used an experimental fusion engine that bent space around it, allowing it to travel faster than light for short bursts. Every burst was dangerous. Each time they activated it, the walls of the ship shook like thunder. Some crew members closed their eyes and prayed during those moments. Others stared in wonder at the colors that filled the windows, strange, twisting lights that no one had ever seen before. It was like sailing through a dream made of stars. Days turned into months and months into years. The crew became a family. They came from different nations, spoke different languages, but aboard the Horizon Ark, they were all simply humans. They celebrated birthdays together, planted small trees in the ship's gardens, and shared stories about life back on Earth. There were times when they laughed so hard they forgot how far from home they were. But there were also nights of silence, when each of them sat by the viewing glass, staring at the endless blackness outside, missing the blue skies of Earth. During the first year, they received regular messages from home. Families sent video messages filled with love and pride. But as the ship moved farther away, communication became slower. What once took minutes began to take hours, then days, then weeks. Eventually, by the third year, it took months for a single message to reach them. The loneliness grew heavier, yet they carried on, knowing that somewhere far ahead a dying world was waiting for them. Captain Lena kept a small notebook where she wrote down her thoughts every night. One of her entries said, "Space is quiet, but it feels like it's listening. Maybe the stars are watching us, wondering if we'll make it." The ship passed through many strange regions of space. They saw things no telescope on Earth had ever captured. Floating clouds of glowing gas that moved like living creatures, storms of magnetic energy that danced like lightning in the void, and a dead planet spinning endlessly, frozen in silence. The scientists on board recorded everything, but even they were speechless at times. The universe was beautiful and terrifying all at once. By the fifth year, the Horizon Ark finally reached the outer edge of the Verelian star system. The readings from the sensors showed that the star was unstable. It was a dying red giant, burning weakly, throwing out waves of radiation and dust. Around it, several planets orbited like tired runners circling a fading flame. Only one of them showed signs of life, the Verelian homeworld. The first sight of that planet left everyone silent. From orbit, it looked wounded. Its oceans were almost gone, replaced by dry land and cracked riverbeds. Thick clouds of ash covered parts of the atmosphere. The once green areas were now gray. The ship's cameras zoomed in to show vast cities half buried in dust. Huge towers leaned at broken angles. It looked like a civilization that had once been bright and beautiful, but had slowly faded away. When the Verelians received the signal announcing the arrival of the humans, there was a long pause. Then faintly a reply came, soft and trembling as if the voice itself was tired. "You came," the voice said. The translator converted their musical language into human speech, and everyone on the ship listened with tears in their eyes. Captain Lena answered gently, "We came to help. You are not alone anymore." The landing was not easy. The surface was covered with storms and unstable ground. The Verelians guided the humans to a flat area near one of their underground cities. The air outside was thin and cold, so the humans wore protective suits. As they stepped out of the ship, they saw the Verelians for the first time with their own eyes. They were tall and elegant, their skin pale and almost glowing under the weak red sunlight. Their eyes were large, filled with light, and their movements were slow, careful as if every step took great effort. They looked fragile, like creatures made of glass and light. When they saw the humans step forward, many of them fell to their knees, overcome with emotion. Their voices rose in a gentle song that echoed through the valley. The first meeting between the two species was quiet but powerful. There were no handshakes, no speeches, just silent understanding. The humans offered food and medical supplies while the Verelians offered their trust. The scientists began studying the planet immediately. They discovered that the Verelian sun was nearing the end of its life. In a few decades, it would explode into a white dwarf, destroying everything nearby. The humans realized they didn't have time to rebuild the planet. They had to find a way to move the Verelians to safety. In the following months, the crew of the Horizon Ark worked side by side with the Verelians. They repaired their damaged machines, taught them how to strengthen their shelters, and built new energy generators that used fusion technology. The Varelians watched in awe as the humans worked tirelessly, handling heavy equipment, enduring the cold, and surviving conditions that would have killed a Varelian within hours. One of the Varelian leaders, named Thera, told Captain Lena, "You come from a cruel world. We could not live there for a single day, yet you walk through our dying storms as if they were rain. You are made of iron and fire." Lena smiled softly and said, "We come from a hard planet, yes, but maybe that's why we learned to care." Slowly, a bond began to form between the two species. The Varelians taught the humans about their art, their music, and their history. Their buildings were shaped like flowers, their technology based on sound and light instead of metal. They could heal wounds using vibrations and grow crystals that stored memories, but they had never learned how to fight against the elements. They had lived in peace for so long that they didn't know how to face destruction. The humans, on the other hand, came from a world that never stopped testing them. They shared stories about Earth, of storms, volcanoes, and the endless struggle to survive. The Varelians listened in wonder. They couldn't imagine a planet where lightning struck every night and oceans raged with waves higher than mountains. To them, humans were both frightening and inspiring, creatures shaped by danger but capable of kindness. Over time, the humans began to feel protective of the Varelians. They couldn't save the planet itself, but they could save the people. Plans were made to build evacuation ships using both human and Varelian technology. It was a massive challenge, but the cooperation between the two worlds made it possible. There were moments of beauty even among the ruins. One night, as the red sun set behind the cracked mountains, the Varelian children gathered near the human camp. They touched the humans' helmets with curiosity and laughed softly when they heard their voices echo. A young engineer named Matteo removed his helmet for a moment and let one of them see his face. The child looked amazed and said something that the translator rendered as, "You are strong and gentle like fire that does not burn." But not everything was peaceful. Some Varelians feared the humans. They whispered that the Deathworlders might bring war or disease. A few of them refused to cooperate, hiding deep underground. There were also human crew members who began to feel the weight of distance and loneliness. One engineer tried to send a private message back to Earth, saying he wanted to come home. But by then, the journey back was impossible. They had crossed a point of no return. Despite the challenges, progress continued. The fusion generators began restoring warmth to small areas of the planet. The Varelians grew stronger with better food and medicine. For the first time in years, they sang songs of hope. The humans recorded those songs, planning to send them back to Earth someday as proof that compassion could reach across stars. Captain Lena often stood outside the camp at night, looking at the dim red sun. The sky was full of dust, but through it she could still see faint stars shining beyond. She thought of home, of the blue oceans and green forests she might never see again. But when she looked at the Varelians working beside her crew, she knew it was worth it. They had answered the call and they had made a difference. The humans had come from a world that tried to destroy them again and again, yet they had learned to survive, to adapt, and to care. Now they were teaching another species how to do the same. The Varelians no longer saw them as monsters from a harsh planet. They saw them as saviors, as friends, as the ones who had brought light into their fading world. And as the horizon arc floated above the dying planet, shining like a second star in the dark sky, one truth became clear to everyone watching below. Sometimes, the most dangerous worlds create the kindest hearts. Life on the Varelian world slowly began to change after the humans arrived. The once silent, dying cities now echoed with new sounds, machines working, voices talking, and music returning. Where there had been only fear and waiting, now there was hope. The humans had brought energy, tools, and ideas, but more than that, they had brought strength. For the first time in generations, the Varelians started to believe they might survive. The first months were the hardest. The planet's weather was unpredictable. Tremors shook the ground, and the thin air made it difficult for the humans to breathe without their suits. But still, they worked every day. They repaired broken energy towers, built shelters, and set up small greenhouses to grow food. The Varelians watched in amazement as humans handled heavy equipment with their bare hands, climbed structures in strong winds, and worked through dust storms that would have killed any Varelian within minutes. To the Varelians, humans seemed unstoppable. They called them the Children of Stone, because they could endure what no other life form could. But the humans didn't see themselves as heroes. They saw the Varelians as friends who needed help. Every time a Varelian fell sick or weak, a human doctor or medic was there with medicine, food, and care. Slowly, trust grew between them. The Varelians, in return, shared their own kind of knowledge. They had no strong muscles or tough skin, but their minds were brilliant. They showed humans how to use light and sound to heal wounds, how to grow crystals that could store energy for centuries, and how to communicate through musical frequencies instead of words. It was strange at first, but soon both species began learning each other's ways. One night under the red sky, a Varelian scientist named Thyera sat with Captain Lena and her crew. They shared warm drinks made from a plant the humans had brought from Earth. Thyera said softly, "We have always been afraid of pain. Our world was gentle for too long. When it turned against us, we didn't know how to fight back, but you are made of pain, yet you are not cruel." Lena smiled sadly and replied, "Pain taught us compassion. We survived storms, hunger, and war. We learned to care because we know what suffering feels like." That night marked the beginning of something beautiful. The two species started to see each other not as alien or different, but as parts of the same struggle for survival. Together they began rebuilding the cities underground, connecting them with tunnels and light systems. The Varelians used their biocrystals to grow glowing walls that shined like living lanterns. Humans added machines to pump fresh air and water through the tunnels. Slowly, the underground cities became alive again. But cooperation wasn't always easy. The Varelians were sensitive and emotional. They worked slowly and carefully while humans were fast and rough, used to fighting nature head-on. Sometimes arguments broke out. A group of human engineers once destroyed a fragile crystal structure by accident while trying to build a power generator. The Varelians were heartbroken. It had taken them years to grow it. The humans felt guilty and frustrated. For days, no one spoke. It was Captain Lena who brought them back together. She gathered both sides and said, "We're different, yes, but our goal is the same, to live. We cannot survive apart. Let's learn instead of blame." Her words struck deeply. After that, humans and Varelians worked side by side, each learning patience from the other. The humans taught the Varelians to build stronger foundations and defenses, while the Varelians taught humans to think before acting, to feel the rhythm of nature instead of fighting it. Months passed. The underground cities became safer and warmer. The dying crops began to grow again in the new greenhouses powered by human technology and Varelian light. The once weak and starving Varelians grew stronger. Children laughed in the tunnels, chasing each other under glowing crystal arches. For the first time in many years, the sound of joy returned to their world. The humans also changed. Living among the Varelians softened them. They had come from a harsh world where survival meant fighting. But here they learned calmness. They learned to listen. They discovered a different kind of strength, the strength of peace. Some of the crew members began spending time learning Varelian music, a language made of gentle tones and light vibrations. When humans sang with them, the songs echoed through the tunnels like the heartbeat of a new civilization. Still, not everything was perfect. The Varelian sun was dying faster than expected. Every month, its light grew dimmer. The scientists aboard the Horizon Ark calculated that they had only a few years before the planet would become too cold to sustain life. This realization brought fear back into their hearts. It wasn't enough to rebuild. They had to escape. Together, the humans and Varelians began building great ships using parts from the Horizon Ark and new materials grown from Varelian technology. It was a mix of metal and living crystal, a blend of two worlds. They worked day and night, designing ships that could carry thousands of Varelians to a new home. The humans promised to guide them to a habitable planet near a yellow star not far from their own solar system. As the work continued, both sides faced losses. The planet's surface quaked more often, and radiation storms grew stronger. A few humans were injured protecting the Varelians from a collapsing structure. Some Varelians died of sickness before medicine could reach them. Each loss was felt deeply by both species. They mourned together, standing side by side in silence. It was in those moments that their bond became unbreakable. The humans admired the Varelians' gentleness, their ability to find beauty even in sadness. The Varelians admired the humans' courage, their refusal to give up no matter how hard things became. They began calling the humans guardians of the flame, because they brought warmth and life to a cold world. And the humans began calling the Varelians keepers of light, because their kindness and wisdom shone even in darkness. One evening, Captain Lena and Thera stood on a cliff overlooking the planet's red horizon. The dying sun painted the sky with fading gold. "Do you ever think we will meet again?" Thera asked. Lena looked at her and said, "If the universe is big enough for our two worlds to find each other once, then it's big enough for us to meet again." They stood together in silence, watching the last light of the sun flicker across the sky. Soon after, the first evacuation ship was ready. When it launched, the Varelians sang an ancient farewell song that carried through the tunnels and out into the sky. The humans stood quietly, their helmets in their hands, watching as the glowing vessel rose into the clouds. It was both a goodbye and a promise that life would continue somewhere new. The cooperation between the two species did more than save lives, it changed them both. The humans, once known for war and struggle, rediscovered compassion and unity. The Varelians, once fragile and afraid, learned courage and endurance. Together, they proved that even in the face of destruction, hope could grow stronger than fear. As the last ships prepared to leave, Captain Lena wrote in her notebook, "We came here thinking we were rescuing them. But they rescued us too. They reminded us why we fight to live, not for power or glory, but for each other." When the final day came, the red sun dimmed for the last time. The humans and Varelians left the planet together, leaving behind the ruins of the old world but carrying its spirit within them. The Horizon Arc guided the fleet through the blackness of space, toward a new dawn. Years later, when historians looked back, they called it the Great Bond. It was not just a story of rescue but of transformation. The Deathworlders had come from a planet of storms and suffering, yet they brought life to a world that was dying. And the Varelians, who once trembled in fear, had shown that even the most delicate hearts could hold incredible strength. Their story became a legend told across future generations. It reminded everyone that survival is not only about strength, it is also about kindness. The Deathworlders had proven that even those born in chaos could bring peace. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, two species that had once been strangers now shared a single truth, that life in any form is worth saving. And so, as the ship sailed into the darkness, leaving behind a fading red star, their journey became more than a mission. It became a message to the universe itself, that compassion could travel farther than light, and that even in the coldest corners of space, friendship could still bloom. Years passed after the Varelians and humans escaped their dying world together. The great fleet of shining ships traveled through the endless dark, guided by the Horizon Arc. It was a long and difficult journey. Many of the travelers had never seen stars move so slowly or felt the silence of space so deeply. Yet even in that silence there was hope. They were no longer running from death. They were moving toward life. Inside the ships, the humans and Varelians lived side by side. They shared food, stories, and laughter. The Varelians taught humans how to calm their minds with music and light. The humans taught them how to stay strong when fear tried to take over. Slowly, the two species became like one family. Children of both worlds played together in the artificial parks inside the ships. Some were even born during the journey. Children who had never seen either Earth or the Varelian homeworld. These children were called the Starborn. Captain Lena Davor, now older and wiser, spent most of her time in the ship's observation deck, looking at the stars ahead. Sometimes she thought of the old Varelian planet, the red sun, the glowing tunnels, and the people who never made it to the ships. Their memory pushed her forward. She knew they had to find a new world worthy of both species. After nearly 12 years of travel, the fleet finally reached a small star system. It had a golden sun, 2 moons, and a green-blue planet covered with oceans and forests. The sensors showed breathable air, mild gravity, and rich soil. The humans named it Haven. The Varelians called it Nathura, meaning new light. It was perfect. The landing was emotional. As the first ships touched the ground, both humans and Varelians stepped out together. The air was fresh, filled with the scent of life. The wind was gentle, carrying soft sounds from the forests. Some people cried, others laughed. Captain Lena simply knelt on the ground and whispered, "We made it." They began building a new city together near a wide river that sparkled like glass. The humans constructed strong foundations and metal structures, while the Varelians grew luminous domes made of crystal-like plants. The blend of metal and light created a breathtaking sight, a city that looked alive. It was neither human nor Varelian. It was something new. Life on the new world was peaceful at first. The two species worked together in harmony. Humans grew crops from Earth, while the Varelians cultivated new glowing fruits and flowers. Every evening they gathered around great fires and light gardens, sharing stories of their past worlds. The children listened with wide eyes as elders spoke of the dying red sun and the long journey through the void. To them it sounded like a myth, a story of courage and unity. But even in peace, challenges came. The new world was alive in ways they didn't expect. Strange creatures roamed the forests, and the nights brought mists that shimmered with unknown energy. Some humans grew cautious, fearing another disaster. But the Varelians, with their gentle nature, tried to communicate with the creatures, discovering that the planet itself seemed to be aware, a living ecosystem that could sense harmony or fear. This discovery changed everything. The Varelians taught humans to live in rhythm with the planet, not against it. They used music and vibrations to calm storms and encourage growth. Humans, in turn, built defenses and technology to protect their new home from external dangers. Together, they created a balance between strength and sensitivity, between logic and emotion. Years turned into decades. The colony flourished. The once separate races now lived as one people, the Alliance of Dawnreach. They developed schools where both human and Varelian children learned about each other's science, art, and history. The term Deathworlder, once used with fear, became a badge of honor. It now meant someone who faced death and still chose to protect life. The Varelians often said that humans were the heart of fire, and they themselves were the light of calm. When those two forces combined, miracles happened. They built towers that reached the clouds, powered by both crystal energy and human fusion tech. They discovered cures for old diseases, combining Varelian biology with Earth medicine. Hunger and war became things of the past. Every year, they celebrated the Day of Stars, the day the fleet first arrived on Haven. On that day, the sky filled with lights as ships released glowing orbs that floated like gentle suns. People sang songs in both languages, remembering those who had been lost and celebrating those who survived. Captain Lena lived long enough to see her dream come true. She became a symbol of unity and compassion. When she grew old and weak, she often sat in the garden surrounded by starborn children. They would ask her what the old world was like. She would smile softly and say, "It was broken, but we fixed it, not by fighting, but by caring." When she passed away, her ashes were scattered at the top of a mountain that overlooked the new city. A crystal monument was built there, glowing at night like a star that never faded. In time, the story of the Deathworlders and the Varelians spread across the galaxy. Other civilizations heard about how a dangerous species had saved another. Many who once feared humanity now reached out to form friendships and alliances. The Great Exchange, as historians called it, became the foundation of a new interstellar age of cooperation. The message that began as a desperate cry for help had turned into something greater, a lesson for all intelligent life. It showed that compassion could exist even in the harshest worlds, and that survival was not about domination, but about understanding. Generations later, the descendants of both species traveled the stars together. They carried symbols of both Earth and the Varelian sun on their ships, representing unity. Whenever they discovered new worlds, they brought with them the wisdom their ancestors had learned, to protect life, to listen to it, and to grow with it. One such starborn captain, a young woman named Mara Davor, the great-granddaughter of Captain Lena, once stood on the bridge of her ship, looking out at a newly discovered system. She remembered the old stories her grandmother used to tell about the dying sun and the desperate call for help. Now it was her turn to answer other calls. She whispered to herself, "Once someone saved us. Now it's our turn to save others." The legacy of that first act of kindness lived on. It had started with fear, then grew into friendship, and finally became the foundation for peace. Across galaxies, people spoke of the Deathworlders not as monsters or warriors, but as healers and protectors. Their story became a part of galactic history, taught in schools and shared in songs. But for those who had lived it, like the last of the original crew of the Horizon Arc, it was more than history. It was memory. One of the engineers, old and gray, would often visit the ship's preserved bridge, now a museum. He would place his hand on the cold metal and whisper, "We came here to save them." But they saved us from ourselves. The bond between the two species remained unbroken. They built new fleets together, exploring deeper into space. Wherever they went, they carried with them the spirit of compassion that had begun with that first desperate signal across the stars. The alliance they created grew stronger than any empire, because it was built not on power, but on empathy. And so, the once desperate cry from a dying world became the song of life for countless others. The Varelians and Deathworlders proved that even in the cold emptiness of space, warmth could be found if only someone dared to care. In the end, the universe remembered them not for their strength but for their kindness. The Deathworlders had answered a call that others might have ignored, and in doing so, they had rewritten the meaning of survival. It was no longer about who was strongest, but who was willing to help. As the twin moons rose over Haven, their light reflected off the great crystal towers, bathing the city in silver and gold. The people below, human and Varelian, old and young, looked up at the stars knowing that their ancestors' courage had given them this peace. Somewhere in that vast sky, the memory of a dying red sun still burned softly, a reminder that from death had come new life. And so the story of the Deathworlders lived on, not as a tale of fear or danger, but as a promise. A promise that wherever there was a voice in need, humanity would listen, and wherever there was darkness, they would bring the light.